Catus, Maximus here. This time, another promotional product from Vevor. I thought I had some of their products I like, some of their products I had not made such nice comments about. Some people wonder about some YouTubers who get free products. I burned a lot of bridges saying my true opinion. So I take the free products. I'd be far more frustrated if I had paid money. But this seems reasonable for the price. This is their second generation workbench. This one is actually the fairly large, 22 inches by 60 inches. So it's 5 feet long by just under 2 feet wide. They have a smaller size of 48 by 24. Maybe should have gone with that, but I do kind of like this larger one. It has a 25 millimeter or inch thick hardwood top. This whole package with the 60-inch version was 70 pounds. So if you consider the $240 with free shipping on a 70-pound flat pack, the price really is reasonable. That's a lot of shipping a 70-pound package. I'll cut away and talk about some of the finer details. But overall, I think for a heavy-duty workbench that has extendable legs. Now, as far as wobbling, I have the legs all the way retracted. And of course, this just fell down. It's pretty good. I do have the heavy-duty feet on there. I did use bolts instead of their thumb screws and actually upgraded the bolts for the mounting here. That seemed to help a little bit with the stability. Overall, it's just fine. It'll wobble more because of the telescoping legs if you have it raised all the way up. That's just the nature of the beast. The wobble isn't that bad, but when the legs are all the way retracted, it's a pretty solid table. To quickly talk about the lower legs, it's decently built. We have a hole on this side for the power strip. The legs are telescoping. They do have these plastic inserts, but they go up pretty tall. It's just what happens a lot when you want to have telescoping legs. 2 bolts. We'll talk about the fasteners. It comes with these, which are fine enough, but I decided to use shoulder bolts. Just because as you use the table, the eyes here will kind of jam into these threads. It can make it kind of difficult. Although it's not a big deal. I like the idea they use a serrated nut and just a thumb screw, so it's easy to adjust. Also comes with 4 swivel casters and 4 of these heavy-duty feet. And it's easier to adjust the height with the heavy-duty feet. They actually include extra large nuts, so you can put a second nut on there and then adjust the foot and then jam nut it on this side. And then this nut is just because it's actually just a grade 8.8 metric N12 bolt that they're using for these heavy-duty feet. And I kind of like that it comes with both feet, which I'm going to use, or these casters. And these casters really aren't that bad. They have a ball bearing upper and lower, so they actually ought to swivel pretty decent. They are locking. We can see the little pretty heavy-duty serrated spring, which grabs the wheel. But also, when you are locking it, kind of hard to see because it's all black. There you go. You can see that those fingers will engage in these teeth here and prevent the caster from swiveling at the same time. So that's actually a nice touch. And I'll give them credit because we can see a ball bearing there and there. So dual ball bearings. These are actually, and they're pretty heavy, these are actually pretty decent casters. And to quickly correct myself about the caster, you don't have to kick this in. You just have to be able to press it down, which is not, takes a little bit of force. So you step on it to lock it, and then you can just step on that little flange that's, once it is locked, pretty stout spring in there. But once it is locked, you can just step on this upper flange to get it to release. You don't have to kick the end of it. It's actually a really nice design because you're not trying to pull up on that. It's, I think all casters, to tell you the truth, I'm kind of enamored. I just never thought of a design like this. Getting this assembled, you just want to get these screws started. All these pieces are still loose. You want to keep these fasteners loose. Once you've got like everything generally together, I would actually tighten down these side bolts on all the sides. That way the whole frame is like tight together. Since these screws aren't very deep into this wood, you want the whole frame to kind of be in its tightened position, and then you tighten down these screws last. That way there isn't a bunch of force against them from if you tighten the frame afterwards. Also, I would start them, with a power driver, but I would finish torquing them with a hand driver, since they, once again, they only, 3/8 of an inch long or something, 10 millimeters long. It's just really, really easy to strip them out, impacting them in or using a power drill. I would do the finished torquing with a screwdriver so you can feel them get tight without stripping out the wood. And one last thing I was going to mention here is if we look at these welds, they are like really, really nice. Maybe over here you can see better. Those look like robotic welds, to tell you the truth. They just are like really consistent and have no evidence of being a hand weld, unless it was like some expert welder. But the welds are actually pretty nice. So those are some of the details, the welds on the legs. It seems to be I'm calling it the second generation because, of course, the legs are now full box structures, or they seem to be U-channels, and you can see that where they have just a whole series of holes up the legs, where these new ones don't. So I think they may have, that may have been some of the complaints of earlier versions of this table, was the U-channel legs having more flex than more standard fully boxed ones. Some other people complained, there's 16 short little screws. These guys that hold the tabletop to the frame. I don't mind that. I showed just a minute ago, tighten the frame all together and then tighten all the screws, and it's pretty solid. And they had a couple of choices. You either have to use short screws to have a smooth top, or you could use bolts, but then you have the holes. They have to be counterbored, so the bolt heads sit below the surface of the table, and then you have all those counterbored holes. And so, you got to pick your poison there, whether you want short little screws that don't protrude through the top and a bunch of them, or you want it to be heavy duty bolted to the frame, but then you have a series of holes on the top of the table. So this is, I think it's a more than decent workbench. It's certainly mount vices and that type of stuff to it. I think it would be really good for various craft work, or maybe setting up 3D printers or laser cutting machines, that kind of stuff onto. Just a generally pretty decent work table, and of course with those casters you can roll it around. I should point out, you can tell it's the second generation one because they have a different logo. And I will give them credit. The top does not have any kind of holes. It doesn't appear that there are any any knots or anything that they had to fill in. There isn't any gaps, since this is like a cutting board where they've glued a bunch of sections together. There isn't any gaps there. Proper finger joints in the long sections. They do advertise a 2,000 pound capacity, which I wouldn't put 1 ton on a table like this. Technically, it probably could sustain it if the load was evenly distributed, like if you put some stacks of plywood on it and no shaking. But nonetheless, for what most people are going to use, you could certainly set, if you're just going to beat on it, you could certainly set transmissions and engines and all sorts of other heavy stuff. Otherwise, if you want a heavy-duty work table, I'd say at least it's a competitive product with the free shipping. And the last thing I was going to mention is with those cross beams, you can certainly cut another piece of wood and make a lower shelf, which is something I may end up doing eventually. And with these side panels, the way they have a lip, you could even do a piece of plywood to have kind of like a thin shelf at the top. So I like the fact that you can modify it and increase your options to make it even more versatile. Anyway, that's my review of the table. As far as Vevor products are concerned, I actually think this one's pretty decent. I mean, if you went into Home Depot or something and saw a heavy-duty workbench table that was 60 inches by 22 inches for $250, that wouldn't be an unreasonable price. Especially when it does have a good finish on the top and actually halfway decent manufactured legs. Anyway, thanks for watching.